These are the most important subjects in people's lives. These are really crucial to how they desire, how they love. I mean, the English novel is about marriage. The English novel is about passion. The English novel is about divorce. The English novel is about the future. The English novel is about children. And you pay us, when you read our books, to talk about the things that are most important in your life and in the reader's life. And if we didn't write about that, our books would not be worth reading, I'm afraid.
There's a question over there, please.
Hello. Thank you, Hanif. I have one question and one observation. Just want to understand the way you use the term reverse colonialism. In what you had in mind, if you could elaborate that. And the second, in one of your just readings, there is a reflection of self-orientalizing, as it were. That's what I heard, I interpreted. Do you think, on the one hand, you said that identity doesn't matter, and yet there is a reflection of, looking through the Orientalist perspective? How you relate to that tension, if I'm correct in understanding?
I said that when I said that identity doesn't matter, I said it didn't matter to me. I didn't think about it anymore. But I can see that people now, certainly in Britain, put together very complex identities. They might say, I'm a Muslim. They might say, I'm a woman. They might say, I'm a Pakistani. They also might say, I'm from Bradford. They might also say, I support Manchester United. They might say, I support the women's struggle. So people are very complex, and their identities are not simple. I think the problems start when you try and simplify your identity. It's complexity that's important, and I think one of the things that novelists try and do, why books, sometimes are so long, is that there's so much complexity in there. And what we need are democratic minds. We need to live in, of course, democratic countries, but to have a democratic mind, which might be what a novel might be, is to allow ourselves to hear all the numerous voices, all the numerous identities that we have speaking within us. So the point wouldn't be, as it were, to find a final identity, to say that I am this, that, or the other. The point would be to hear all these things in order to see that we are more complex than we allow ourselves to be. And it seems to me that that's where we begin to get we become more interesting as human beings. The gentleman over there was talking about what he called hush-hush themes. I think he's probably referring to something like homosexuality or sexuality and so on. But as soon as we can begin to include those in our psyche, in the way we think about ourselves, we become more complex, and we have a much broader view of what a human being is and can be. And I think that's one of the things that the novel, for instance, is very good at doing. I know that's not an answer to your question, but it's the answer I fancy giving.
I've just read a little bit of one of your books several years ago and heard you today, and on both occasions thoroughly enjoyable. I'll make sure I read everything you've written from now on. What I'd like to ask is, as I understand from Muniza's introduction, you kind of pioneered this genre of person born to mixed parentage in a Western European country and taking on a new identity, as it were, being a writer, being a social philosopher in the bargain. Is there an evolving alliance amongst such writers? People like Mohsin Hamid might be here today, and in non-English speaking Europe as well. I mean, not official, not organized, something evolving along these lines?
The writers that are coming out of Pakistan now, like Muniza's daughter, Kamala Shamsi, Mohsin Hamid, Mohammed Hanif, Daniel Moeddin, and so on. There's some fantastic writers coming out of Pakistan. You've got a big reason to be very, very proud of these writers. These writers are admired all over the world now, and it's a fantastic flourishing coming out of this strange country. And these are some of the best writers in the world, and it's an amazing achievement. The father of us all is, of course, Rushdie, who's probably the most important writer in the world, and a man of huge symbolic value. a man who speaks for himself, but also for his time and place in India. And it's amazing that this is happening. And I partly wanted to come here because of these, this amazing group of young writers who are becoming so well known now. I wanted to see what sort of place is it that makes such interesting people. So there's something really creative and fantastic going on in this country. And I also believe that there's a Pakistani filmmaker who was nominated for Best Doc for her documentary at the Oscars, which is another amazing feat. So something really fascinating is starting to move and change in this country. If you measure a country, as it were, by the level of its culture, by the intelligence of its writers and the intelligence of its artists, there's something really great going on here. And I'm glad to be here to witness it in some small way. The lady there has a question.
I'm probably going to cause a bit of aggro with my question, but having been brought up as a British-born confused Desi, was part of your writing frustration at not finding an identity, or is trying to escape a labeled identity? And at which point did you become wholly British and let go of the Pakistani or subcontinental background in your mind?
I never let go. I hold on to it all. It's all there. I mean, all the pieces. One's identity through one's mother, one's identity through one's mother's family, one's identity through one's father's family, through one's uncles, and then through the whole of the society, my identification with British pop, my identity with British young people, my love of the United States in the 60s through the Vietnam War and through Jimi Hendrix and so on. I said earlier, I really answered this question, that people's identities are really complex. And the more of it, as it were, they keep going, the richer they are. So I don't think that the idea of having an identity is the idea of finally deciding and then you can say, well, that's it, thank you very much, I know who I am, I don't have to bother. The idea of an identity, as it were, is of gathering more of the world into yourself than you allowed in before. And you do that through conversation, through other people, and conversation with yourself, through forms of self-knowledge, through reading and so on. And really through opening your mind rather than closing your mind. So the idea of identity is less interesting than seeing yourself as a human being who's growing and developing all the time. So it's never a done thing. Someone else? A lady over there?
Just wanted to know what you're working on now, what you're looking forward to working on, and what drives you. What's really driving you to be interested in that or to do that?
What drives me is fascination for my work, you know. When I get up in the morning, when I got up today, I was writing. I want to write. Most writers like writing. Most artists, you know, like doing what they do. We have a huge love and passion. That's what drives you. I have to make a living. But I'd still do the same thing if I didn't have to make a living. You know, my dear friend Stephen Frears is a film director. He gets up in the morning, he's 73, makes films. That's what he wants to do. So I'm writing a novel, I'm writing a movie, there's some stories I want to write, some essays I'm working on. So the whole thing is still going forward, and I'm fascinated by the desire to speak, I'm fascinated by the desire to write, I'm fascinated by the desire I still have to be some sort of an artist. And to do better, to work harder, to write better books, to write better sentences, to say things I haven't said before. I mean, you're lucky if you're an artist, you're doing something you really want to do, and you're really driven, as you suggest, by that. You know, I teach writing, I teach creative writing for my sins in London, you know, and if the students don't have that, if they say to you, can you inspire me, you think, you know, inspire yourself. You know, it's got to be, you've got to have the passion, you've got to have the desire. You can't talk somebody else into being an artist if they don't want to be an artist. Being an artist is a real passion, it's a real love. People often sometimes talk about artists as though we have a lot of discipline. It's not really to do with discipline, actually. You do it because you want to do that more than you want to do anything else that day.
Hi, I had two questions. One, I wanted to know how the working process works for you, how you go about it. And secondly, I once saw a comment by you in an article about where you were saying how while there is now a genre of writing about multicultural Britain by Black British and British Asian writers, there's very little written about multicultural Britain by white British people. And as a white British woman who has lived in Pakistan and is married to a British Pakistani, I was interested in hearing you expand on that.
What was the first question? Oh, the process. It's chaos, the process. It's very hard to describe. It's chaos. You have about 3 or 4 ideas for 3 or 4 characters. And you think, how, you know, there's this bloke and he's running a laundrette and his best friend's a skinhead, and then there's this and then there's that. And you spend ages trying to put all these people in the same story. And you spend ages trying to work out the proportion of the people in the story, and then you spend a lot of time working out the plot, the narrative, and, you know, whether it's too quick, too slow, too this, too that. You know, you just spend ages doing it. So the process is sort of chaotic and really boring for anybody else to have to think about, and really boring for me to do, which is working out the story, and, you know, and cutting that bit and making that bit longer. I mean, it's just, you just have to sit there for ages, and it drives you mad. And I was sitting in my room the other day, and I've been working for about 3 days on something, and I thought, if only people knew how I suffer, to try and bring them such pleasure, the boredom of writing these books. And that's what writers, you know, what it is to write. You just sit there for ages until blood comes out of your ears. The other question, I was very interested and very struck by the fact that there were many writers in Britain, including Rushdie earlier on with some of his books, who were writing about race and racism in Britain. But none of the whites ever did. They never saw it as being interesting for them, or they never wrote black or Asian characters, just as we write, you know, white or Irish or Scottish characters. Their imagination seemed very limited in terms of what they were able to address. And I thought one of the most interesting subjects in Britain is, and certainly in Europe, and indeed in the whole world today, is race, and how people divide things and cut things up in terms of race, and what we use race in order to do with other people, how we use race in order to have contempt for people or to exclude them or to think about them in certain ways. Race is the major signifier in the world today, and it's not only to do with race, to do with color or whatever. It's to do with who's in and who's out and how we think about people. So I would have thought that more writers, as it were, would use that as a signifier in terms of their writing, and I'm shocked that they aren't. That's all. That's it, really. There's a chap there.
May I? Mr. Hanif Kureishi, if I heard it right, you said that the city of Karachi is on the decay, and it's become some kind of a war zone.
I said that that's what somebody had said to me. I can't say that I can speak.
Okay, I got the impression that you had formed this kind of an impression yourself. And being an old Karachiite, with my elders having been born here many years before 1947, I would like to take this statement with a pinch of salt. And speaking on behalf of many of my other fellow Karachiites who love this city very much and wouldn't like to live anywhere else in this whole world. And at the same time, you are also glad to be here and attending the Karachi Literature Festival, a city which is supposed to be on the decay. Do you think all these good things would be happening around here at the moment?
No, I think it's a fascinating mixture of how certain times in certain cities, where there are presumably real conflicts between different political views, conflicts often that are very, very violent. I mean, someone said to me the other day, they said there are more journalists murdered in Pakistan than in any other country in the world, apart from Mexico, every year. And that is someone from Penn told me that. At the same time, there's some fascinating writing coming out of this place. And out of such danger comes real creativity and real culture. And how could that not absolutely fascinate you and fascinate me and want to come here to see what's going on?
Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry, there are lots more questions, but our time is up. I think it's lunchtime. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Manisha.